What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Coming up on today's episode, we got a couple of news items to hit along with a rumor as well. But the first thing I want to discuss is Mike Hall returning to practice, and then we'll talk about a potential trade that is in a little bit of the rumor mill. But Hall, the second-round pick by Cleveland this past draft out of Ohio State, missed the last 4 games with a knee injury. He has been activated off of injured reserve. The Browns had plenty of roster spots available. Greg Newsome got placed on IR. They waived Kadarius Toney, so plenty of room for someone to come up from IR to the active 53-man roster. Now, we have not really seen much of the former Buckeye. Remember, he was suspended for the first 5-6 games of the season. Then he comes off that suspension. His first game is against the Eagles. He plays the next 4 games, and then a knee injury pops up in practice, and we have not seen him for the last month. But now he is back in the mix and hopefully plays the rest of the season, so we can at least get 8 games of film and stats and just overall eyeball test to have a better idea as to what we have in Mike Hall for 2025. The Browns' defensive tackles, aside from Hall, are pretty up in the age column. They re-signed Shelby Harris and Maurice Hurst. They inked Dalvin Tomlinson to a long-term deal. Those are all some older veteran players. So they decided to go young in the draft with Hall. The issue is, we've hardly seen the guy play. Just 4 games so far, and we are knocking on the door of Christmas. So it would be very nice to see more of Mike Hall so that when we go into free agency and draft mode and we start assessing what this team's needs are, we can have a better idea as to whether or not the Browns need a defensive tackle. Like, we were never going to likely come away from Hall's rookie year with an absolute as to whether or not he is or is not a formidable starter in the NFL. But I like to be closer to that conclusion than we are right now, because 4 games so far, we really can't say one way or the other. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's episode, including some trade buzz out there, as a proud Tennessee alum, it's going to be a fun week and a half here on the channel. So who you got for next Saturday? Ohio State or Tennessee? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know what a good wager we can do as a channel is for this game. I'm going to the game. I'm flying to Columbus. I've got my ticket and everything. So if you plan on going to the game, feel free to hit me up. We can definitely arrange some kind of tailgate meetup or something like that. But who you got? Buckeyes or Volunteers? Next thing I want to discuss is Kirk Cousins coming to Cleveland, maybe? I don't know, Jim. This one definitely seems like a little bit of a reach. We got to bring back some Bernie heads soon. I'd give this one, though, like 1 Bernie head. I don't think it's 0, but I'm not going to go all the way to 2 Bernie heads. But Dan Graziano from ESPN recently put out an article along with Jeremy Fowler on some of the rumors they're hearing and whatnot, and he listed a couple of teams he could see Cousins getting traded to after this season, because if you don't know, Cousins has not been playing very well for Atlanta. They used their 8th overall pick back in April on Michael Penix Jr., quarterback from Washington, and he included the Cleveland Browns as a potential Cousins destination. So we are going to talk about the possibility of the Browns acquiring Kirk Cousins, what it could look like cost-wise. Is it a good idea? We're going to break it all down on today's episode. But first, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has this awesome feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. If you don't want to spend 30 to 60 minutes searching through tickets and comparing prices across sites, visit Game Time for their Game Time Picks, because it's just going to show you the best value based on where the seat is and the cost it's going for right now. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. If you want to go to the Chiefs game this weekend, the Bengals game next weekend, Ohio State and Tennessee, use Game Time and save $20 off your first purchase when you use promo code CHATSPORTS. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So let's talk about the idea of trading for Kirk Cousins. Let's take it step by step, starting with, Is Kirk Cousins still a good quarterback? It's a little bit of a tough answer because, on one hand, he has had a miserable stretch over the last month. No touchdowns, 8 interceptions in 4 consecutive games. Keep in mind, he had never gone 2 consecutive games without a touchdown pass. He's now gone 4 in a row. After having a really nice week 2 to week 9 of the season, the guy just completely fell off a cliff. Having said all that, I still could see Kevin Stefanski, if you were to ask him, remove the money, remove the trade, just Kirk Cousins straight up. Is that a quarterback in 2025 you could get some production out of? I think he'd answer yes. I do. Maybe he looks the last 4 weeks as something too big to overlook, but I think his connection to Cousins, since they did briefly overlap in Minnesota, and the way Stefanski runs his offense, and the way Cousins has been running his offense, which is play action, deep shots, which is what Stefanski got so much out of Flacco with, and Jameis with, he could see Cousins as a great fit for his system. So, from a numbers perspective, I'm definitely on the weary side from what we've seen over the last month, but I still could see Stefanski buying in. Now, let's look at the cost side of things here. Can the Browns swing it? Yes, they have plenty of draft ammunition, and the way Cousins has played over the last couple of weeks, I don't think he is going to cost you too much. The Falcons would definitely want something, knowing that in some people's eyes, he could still be a very high-ish level starting caliber quarterback. But it's not going to cost a first, a second, a third, maybe a fourth, maybe a combination of day 3 picks, 1 or 2. But overall, it could be done from a draft picks perspective. What about the money, the moolah? Cousins signed a 4-year, $180 million contract in March. Ignore the $180 million. It's not really relevant here because what we want to look at is 2 things. One, the guaranteed. He's got $90 million guaranteed straight up. An extra $10 million, bringing up to $100, kicks in for 2025. So the Falcons will have paid him essentially $90 million for 1 year of work. That alone might be too big of a number for owner Arthur Blank of the Atlanta Falcons to sign off on a trade. He might just come down to the front office and go, listen, guys, I didn't pay him $90 million for 1 year. I understand things did not go well, but that's why I hired you, my coaches and GMs, to get the most out of a $90 million signing. So figure it out. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant on seeing Cousins get traded after just 1 season. But if he does get dealt, that base salary is what you have to look at, $27.5 million. That's what the Browns or any team would be taking on. Now, sometimes we see teams orchestrate trades where, the Falcons take on a lot of his contract to get better draft picks in return, or the Browns take on all of his contract but don't give a whole lot of draft picks in return. There is some wiggle room, but that's just a rough starting point. For me, it really boils down to a few things. Contract from both the Browns side and the Falcons side. $90 million for 1 year might just be too big to move on from. Plus, Kirk Cousins has a no-trade clause. So if he simply does not want to go play for the Cleveland Browns, he does not have to. Both sides could work out a great deal, and Cousins could just go, yeah, I don't want to go. Kapush, done. That, and just, sure, not a ton, but some draft capital required. That's just one more thing into the hopper. I think Cleveland is unlikely to acquire Cousins. I would not bet on him being the Browns quarterback in 2025. But let me turn it over to you guys watching at home. Would you trade for Kirk Cousins? We'll just kind of keep it down to a simple level here. Kind of put out some of the boring contract mumbo-jumbo. Just kind of a straight up, right? 4th for Cousins. Would you do that, yes or no? Third thing I want to discuss is the salary cap. Yeah, we're at this stage of the offseason because that's where we are, the offseason. Sitting at 3-10, there's not much of a season left to discuss. And when I was combing through this ESPN article about Kirk Cousins maybe going to the Browns, I also saw this little nugget at the very end of the article. And so what I noticed was the article pointed to what the projected salary cap could be for 2025 after the owners had a meeting in Irving, Texas this week. Now, Over the Cap, which is my preferred place to get salary cap information, their 2025 salary cap projection is based on a $272.5 million salary cap. They are saying the Browns are $15.3 million and change over 272.5. Jeremy Fowler said he's hearing it could be about 275. So that would free up $2.5 million of salary cap space for the Browns, making them just $12.8 million over. Ultimately, $2.5 million is not going to be a major needle mover, but I think we can all agree when you are $15 million over the cap, every million counts, right? $2.5 million could be the difference between signing one more veteran player or not. So some positivity potentially coming on the horizon for Cleveland. Before I get you guys on out of here, I do want to give some shout outs to a few of you, 10 to be exact, that typed me in our previous video for a shout out. I just picked 10 at random. So Jason, Tino, Austin, Zen, Lee, Kathy, longtime viewer, Dan, Camden, Tracy, the wild card, and Rick. Thank you guys so much for watching our content. I understand at 3 and 10, there's really not a whole lot to get up and be excited for when it comes to this team, but I really appreciate those of you that hang out with me all year long, no matter win or lose. So really grateful and really appreciative of those of you that hang out with us for the entire season.